Hey everybody, welcome back to Hemingway Land, and thanks as always for clicking the play button. So today we're going to be discussing properties in the Wild Horse Mesa Subdivision. Now, normally on each of our listing pages, we like to post a video that discusses the details of a given property. The video you're about to watch, however, is not going to be a property-specific video, so much as it's going to be a subdivision-specific video. And this video will be posted at the top of each and every property's listing page that we have in this subdivision from now until the end of time. And why do we do this, guys? Because this region tends to be one that we buy and sell a lot of land in, and in the interest of efficiency, it makes more sense to make one comprehensive video that addresses all the common questions and concerns rather than making multiples. Additionally, once you've discussed the details of a specific region, the differences in individual properties tends to be relatively minor. Now, of course, as always, guys, each individual listing page is full of a lot of property-specific information that will help you, once you've learned about the subdivision, to better compare and contrast the listings we have available in it to figure out which works best for you. So, for instance, on any one of our individual listing pages, if you come down here to the property details section, you can learn more about this specific property by clicking through these tabs and reading the information we've provided. Additionally, under the Maps and Boundaries section of the listing page, we'll have a number of interactive maps, plats, and drone overlays, which will help detail the exact size, shape, and location of each individual lot. And finally, down here at the bottom of the page, we will always have a large and detailed photo gallery with images from that specific listing to help give you a better sense of the property, the terrain, and its surroundings. Now, before we get started, guys, I do want to say there are subdivisions where we buy and sell a couple hundred listings in each year. At the time that I'm recording this video, this is not one of those. It may be in the future, but at this time it's not. That said, we do tend to list at least a dozen properties a year out here. And depending on when you're watching this, we may have 10 listings or we may have 2. The easiest way to sort through whatever inventory we have will always be to visit our subdivision master information page, which will be linked here. And on this page, you'll be able to see a list of the available properties. Now, of course, this is designed to help you more easily compare and contrast them through their location on the map, or their acreage, or their price point. Either way, it's just a lot easier to see a list of what's available, narrow down your selections that way, and then visit their specific listing page to delve further into the details. All right, so with all that out of the way, let's get into discussing the Wild Horse Mesa Subdivision. All right, so the properties we're talking about today are located in Colorado, more specifically the southern part of the state down here in Costilla County, in what is commonly referred to as the San Luis Valley. Now, just to give you guys a sense, this is a relatively rural county with a lot of undeveloped land. Population of the entire region is only about 3,600, with the town of San Luis being not only the nearby population center, but also the county seat. Of course, what this county lacks in people, it more than makes up for in outdoor attractions and recreation. See what I did there, guys? Segue. So, for instance, within very close proximity of the property, you've got the tallest dunes in North America in the Great Sand Dunes National Park. You've got Zapata Falls, the Rio Grande National Forest with its thousands and thousands of acres to camp, hike, and hunt in. And, of course, with the Rio Grande snaking through the county from north to south, you've got plenty of great places to boat and fish, including the Smith Reservoir, the Cove Lake Reservoir, the Mountain Home Reservoir, and the Sanchez Reservoir, to name just a few. In addition, guys, you are none too far from what sits on the other side of the state line, namely the Taos Ski Valley and some of the best skiing in America. Now, of course, all this is nice to know, but if we're buying land, we want to know where the nearest towns are and how far we're going to have to drive for some basic supplies, right? Well, I'm glad to know that the aforementioned town of San Luis sits roughly 5 minutes from the subdivision, and here you'll find some of the basic amenities such as groceries, supplies, post office, couple small restaurants, things like that. When we're talking about larger needs, however, specifically if we're going to develop the property and we need building materials, or even if we're going to live on the land and need things like medical or schools, for those you'll have to drive to Alamosa in neighboring Alamosa County, roughly about 40 minutes from the subdivision. Now, fortunately, this is a much larger town than San Luis. Population here is about 10,000, so larger head count than the entire county of Costilla. And here you'll be able to find things like the San Luis Valley Health Hospital, Adams State University, fast food restaurants, pharmacies, and of course big box stores like Ace Hardware for all your building supply needs, and everyone's favorite for all your other needs, Walmart. They have a Walmart. In addition, of course, Alamosa is just a bigger town with more going on, so more places to eat, shop, hang out, so on and so forth. Now, if I went through fast through any of this, you'll be glad to know that each of our listing pages includes a section called Towns and Attractions, which will provide for you a helpful list of all the nearby attractions with links to their respective websites, as well as photos from the nearby towns. So if you are looking to buy land out here and you're not local to the property, you can always review the information here to get a better sense of what's nearby and what it all looks like. Alright, so the Wild Horse Mesa subdivision is located just west of Highway 159 and occupies roughly this space you see here. And of course, one of the major attractions to owning land in this region is the very close proximity you will have to the over 1,400 acres which make up the Sanchez Reservoir and State Wildlife Area. In fact, the Wild Horse Mesa and the subdivision developed around it gets its name from all of the, yes you guessed it, wild horses that freely roam this area. Wild horses which, by the way, local landowners commonly see, and which you will too if you decide to buy some land out here and develop it. So if you do, bring some apples for these guys. Now, the reservoir itself is of course a nice attraction to have in your backyard, particularly if you're a fisherman. I am not a fisherman, so what I'm about to read is something I had to Google, but species of fish native to this area include walleye, trout, yellow perch, and catfish. Of course, it should be noted that they do have a boat ramp. You can take a boat out there and fish, but it's not really the place you take your speedboat and jet ski. Whatever the case, it is a really pretty region and a very nice attraction to have in your proverbial backyard. In addition, guys, as you've probably noticed from the photos, this area is flanked by a number of southern Colorado's most picturesque mountains, most notably the Sangre de Cristo Range to the west, but you've also got the San Juan and La Guarita ranges as well, not to mention Blanca Peak and Mount Lindsay to the north. Now, just to go back to the map here for a second, as noted, the area you see here is Wild Horse Mesa, and the subdivision runs from the highway to a little west of the reservoir. There's actually a second very small subdivision over here called Little Norway, which we have also sold property in, but the vast majority of this region is all part of the Wild Horse Mesa subdivision. Now, just to throw some stats up here on the screen for a second, you've got about 4,000 parcels in this subdivision, 97% of which are vacant or undeveloped. So while this is a residential subdivision, and while there are homes out here, properties that have houses built on them make up a small minority. Now, mind you, undeveloped is sometimes a categorization by the county which may not include certain types of development or certain types of land use, but either way, it's safe to say that if you buy land out here, you're going to have more privacy than neighbors. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the average property in this subdivision is 2.5 acres in size. Mind you, that is the average. There will always be anomalies in the plat, there will always be exceptions, and there is a small region here where the lot sizes are smaller, which I'll get back to in a minute. But the point is the average parcel is 2.5 acres, and if you want something larger, in most cases you'll need to buy adjacent lots. Now, it should be noted, guys, that when we have adjacent lots, we sell them that way. So if you're looking at two listings on our site, wondering if they can be combined, they can't, okay? Next, Mesa is Spanish for table, which was the original explorer's way of saying the area is flat. Most of the land out here is level, so somewhat flat, somewhat featureless, but usually pretty easy to park or build on. Now, again, there will always be exceptions. Invariably, when you've got property on a mesa, there's property at the base, climbing the side of the mesa, which usually has a pronounced incline or hillside to it, but again, those parcels are in the minority. And finally, guys, when we're talking about elevated mesa tops, inclines, declines, ridgelines, hillsides, and so on, it's important to talk about elevation. Properties in this sub range from 7,900 to 8,800 feet in elevation, with, of course, the flat land at the base of the mesa being on the lower end of that, and the land on the mesa top starting at about 8,500 feet on the west side, and gradually, very gradually, increasing about 300 feet by the time you get to the east side of the mesa, closer to the reservoir. Now, just to return to the map here for a second, I'm going to try to demonstrate something. If you are trying to narrow down your search for land, you're looking at this region, you know where you want to buy property and where you don't want to buy property, and maybe you're looking at 24 listings on our website or 24 listings on someone else's website, trying to find the location that works best for you. Here's the easy way to do it. So, the 4,000 lots in this subdivision are broken down into units. There are 8 units of land out here. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and, out of nowhere, K. Point being, if you know the giant swaths of land that those units cover, you'll be able to better narrow down your search. So, pictured here is a map of the region with rough, guys, let me say this again, rough approximations of where these units start and end. As you can see, units A, B, and C are all over here on the west side of the subdivision, closer to the highway, and below the mesa. Then you've got units D, E, and K along the top west side of the mesa, overlooking the valley. Unit F is along the top east side of the mesa, overlooking the lake. And finally, Unit G being the closest to the lake. Point being, once you know what is where, it really helps you narrow down your search if you know you want to be close to the lake, or on the top of the mesa, or at the base of the mesa, but to the south versus the north, so on and so forth. And if you come back here to our master information page, you can see the way the properties are organized, or rather, you would see this if I had more than 3 displayed here at the time I'm doing this video. The properties are organized by their units. So right now we only have listings in units C and D, but if you're watching this in the future and we've got whatever, 24 listings across all 8 units, you'll be able to quickly narrow down your search knowing I only want to look at properties in, for instance, unit D. And then you could come over here, click on this, and go right to that property's specific listing page. And by the way, guys, when I said earlier that all the lots were basically 2.5 acres in size, except one small region, that small region is unit G, where all of the land is subdivided into smaller 1-acre lots. Okay? All right. So now you've found your ideal property. Let's talk about developing it and what that's like out here. And any conversation like that has to begin with a discussion of roads and utilities. So, despite being a pretty large region, most of the roads out here are roughly the same quality and condition, which is to say that they are dirt roads that get trafficked often enough to the point it shouldn't be too difficult to get around. Now, there are 2, what we will call major arterials through this subdivision that are Wild Horse Drive and Overland Way. If you happen to be buying land right off one of those, you'll never have a problem. They're not paved, but they're about as good as it gets otherwise. Most of the other roads out here look like this or this. Some of the roads closer to the base of the mesa may be a little more sandy, like this. But for the most part, anywhere you buy land out here, you should be able to get around pretty easily. That said, in a region this undeveloped, particularly one where so many landowners are going to be driving to the top of the mesa, we recommend a larger truck or off-road capable vehicle, particularly, guys, because it's Colorado, where snowfall is not uncommon. Now, additionally, if we're talking about utilities, it's important to note that this subdivision is different from what we normally see. Normally, utilities have a presence in one region, and that's usually where the homes and development kind of builds out from there. That's not the case in Wild Horse, where utilities tend to exist in small pockets throughout the subdivision. Now, obviously, there's more the closer you get to the lake, or the closer you get to concentrations of development, but the fact that you can find small, partially developed lots that have some kind of power lines going to them suggests to me that the local utility company probably works with landowners out here and can make it affordable to get connected to the grid. Of course, if you have any questions about what the road conditions are like at a specific property we're selling, or if there's power, and if not, how far away is it, so on and so forth, you can always go to our individual listing pages, come down here, click on the Access and Utilities tab, and you will get detailed information about the conditions of both at that property. Additionally, guys, as noted earlier, at the bottom of each page there will be images from that specific property, which will help to give you a better sense of those 2 very important things. And if you do have any questions about the cost of getting connected to the grid, or what it might cost to run a pole or 2 out to a property you're looking at, you can always contact San Luis Valley Electric Cooperative, the local utility that services this region. Their contact information is on all of our listing pages under the aforementioned Access and Utilities tab, as well as our Helpful Links tab. Additionally, guys, we should also discuss getting water to the property. Of course, if you're building in the lower elevations of the subdivision or the region closer to the lake, this is going to be a lot easier than if you were building on top of the mesa. In fact, you should pretty much anticipate that drilling a well from the top of the mesa will either be wholly impractical or prohibitively expensive, and you should plan to haul and store your water rather than getting it from the ground. That said, if you're buying land in the A, B, C, or G units, you do see more wells in those regions, and thus, as is to be expected, it's probably a lot easier and more affordable to do there. Of course, it should be noted, guys, that beyond what I have just said, we here at Hemingway Land do not like to opine much on cost and logistics when it comes to getting water to a property, and for that, we always recommend speaking to well drillers local to the region, as they will know infinitely more about this topic than we ever will. Additionally, state agencies such as the Colorado Division of Water Resources are also good to speak with, which is why, much like the local electric company, we have their website linked for you here, again, under our Helpful Links tab. Now, of course, whenever we're talking about developing land, we get a lot of calls and questions about, can I do this, can I build that? So let me try to streamline my explanation of developing land in this subdivision or any subdivision you buy land in. As a landowner, you will always have 2 governing bodies to concern yourself with. One is the county, which enforces zoning ordinances, and the other is the Home or Property Owners Association, which enforces what are known as covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Now, we will return to that topic in a moment. So, in regards to the county, Costilla County has a zoning department. They have defined the land in this subdivision as ER, or estate residential. And if you would like to learn more about what that means, you can come to any one of our listing pages, click on the Zoning and Restrictions tab, and you will find an excerpt from the Costilla County Zoning Ordinance, helpfully linked here. And if we go through this PDF, you will see how they define estate residential, and more importantly, you can scroll down here to see what is acceptable, what is unacceptable, what requires a special permit, what requires no permit, etc. Now, for the record, people, I am by no means an authority on Costilla County zoning, but there are a few things about zoning which tend to be the same anywhere you go. So, for instance, if you want to take your land and build one of these on it, you will have no problems. If, however, you want to take your land and build one of these, you are likely to have some problems. Point being, a little bit of common sense goes a long way. As long as things are built up to code, if you want to do a shipping container home or a barn dominium or some sort of pre-built modular home that's built in Texas and shipped up to the property, as long as you're abiding by the rules, you should be fine. And of course, we always like to provide pictures in our photo galleries of what the nearby developed home sites look like, just to give potential buyers a sense of the what we'll call range of development within that region, what's been done before, and thus what is possible to do again. Now, earlier I said there were two things to concern yourself with, one being the county, the second being an owner's association, like a home or property owners association. Well, fortunately for you guys, Wild Horse Mesa has neither. And this not only means that there's no additional set of rules to familiarize yourself with, it also means that beyond the property taxes you pay to the county each year, there are no additional fees that you'll be charged for owning land in this subdivision. Now, it should be noted, guys, that anytime you encounter some formally platted subdivision like this, which is to say some large swath of land that some developer took the time to rezone and subdivide and add roads to, there will be corresponding documentation that was filed with the county that is known as the CCRs, or, as I mentioned earlier, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And this is a topic for a whole other much longer video, but essentially there are additional guidelines that anyone buying land in this region should be aware of, because in theory, you as the landowner are supposed to abide by these restrictions. Now, most of these tend to be what we like to call, quote, logical good neighbor restrictions that deal primarily with things like the disposal of trash or prohibitions on excess noise. So, as an example, I've seen thousands of these documents. They all pretty much prohibit raising pigs on the land for what should be obvious reasons. Additionally, I have seen ones that are very strict and have a dozen pages of provisions about acceptable colors of homes built on the land. And I've seen ones that are very relaxed. Wild Horse Mesa has what I would call very relaxed covenants. You can see a copy of these linked here on our listing page, and you can see that this is barely 2 pages. Most of it is standard. The only thing here that really take note of are the square footage requirements, which is nothing smaller than 600 square feet for a 1-story structure and nothing smaller than 800 square feet for a 2-story structure, which suggests to me that depending on your definition of a tiny home, even that may be acceptable out here. And of course, let me quickly address the obligatory RV questions that we get so often. RVs are acceptable in Costilla County for 14 days in a 3-month period. Anything longer than that requires what is called a, quote, long-term camping permit. And as is to be expected, guys, if you're building a permanent home on the property, you need something to live out of temporarily while that home is being constructed. That is normal, natural, and obvious, and counties always make exceptions for this when you have a building permit. But each county has their own specific rules about it, which primarily has to do with how you're disposing of waste during that time and where your drinking water is coming from, so on and so forth. And because all that information is a little above my pay grade, I will always advise buyers, talk to the county zoning department. And speaking of being completely out of my depth on a topic, because this is Colorado, we always get questions about marijuana, which in itself is even more complicated than zoning. It has to do with individual laws at the state, county, municipal level. So at the very least, I would advise you to consult with the county, if not an attorney. All right, people. So if you would like to purchase one of these properties, you can do it one of 3 ways that I will detail here. Before I get to that, however, guys, let me just quickly say, if you thought this video was long before, me detailing the purchasing process while attempting to address all the common questions and all the common concerns here would only double the runtime. So I'm going to go through this quickly, and I'm going to advise you that if I go too fast, if there's anything here that doesn't make sense to you, if there's any aspect of this process that is unclear, that you would like to learn more about and understand better, we have very helpfully included on our site pages, guys, such as the ambiguously titled How It Works Buying From Us, which will go into far greater detail than I will be able to provide here about those 3 purchasing process. Okay? Whatever the case, whichever one of those 3 you choose, it all begins here, at the Buy Now button found at the top of each and every one of our listing pages. So let me run through this quickly, guys. The first way is what we like to call a website close, where you pay the entire purchase price directly to our company. The way that works is you check out here on the website, usually with a $500 non-refundable deposit. We get you documentation within 24 hours, and once you've had a chance to review it, you pay the remaining balance. And that balance can be paid by credit or debit card, wire transfer, or cashier's check. And once that's been completed, we record the deed with the county, and congratulations, the property is officially yours. And yes, it's really that easy. If, however, you are reluctant to spend thousands and thousands of dollars over the internet, we completely understand. And this is why we have the second option of a title escrow close. And the way that this one works is you pay the entire cost of the land, but you pay it to a title company. So again, you come here, you place the $500 non-refundable deposit at checkout. We get you a different set of documentation, again, within 24 hours. This includes a contract. You sign it, we submit it to the title company, and they do the rest. And then, guys, at close of escrow, they request the remaining balance on the property, and you pay them instead of strangers on the internet. And only once our company has deeded the property into your name will the title company release your money to us. Now, people, let me just briefly pause to say this. If you have never purchased property before, if you are not familiar with what a title company does, let me make it real easy on you. Title company is a third-party intermediary that handles both the conveyance of the property and the disbursement of the funds. And let me go one step further and make it even simpler. A title company is a business whose whole job in life is to prevent fraud in real estate transactions. So if you are skeptical about buying land on the internet, and again, we completely understand, this is the option for you. And much as we have this handy How Buying Works page on our site, we also have the even more handy Title Escrow Facts page, which goes into even greater detail about how that process works. Now, finally, guys, that brings us to the third process, which is buying on terms or paying a smaller down payment and then monthly payment and purchasing the property slowly over time. Now, keep in mind, guys, this third method is not available on all of our properties, but when it is, you will see a second Buy Now button here on the listing page. And if you click that, it will detail whatever that down payment, monthly payment setup might be. So, for instance, here, instead of paying the entire $12,000 at once, this allows for $4,000 down and $350 a month for 30 months. Additionally, guys, as you can see on this specific property, we allow 12 months same as cash, meaning that whether you pay the whole thing on day 1 or day 365, you are only paying $12,000 total. Now, of course, keep in mind, this particular breakdown is for this one sample property I'm showing you here in the video. Terms will obviously be different depending on the property. That said, all of the terms contracts we provide our buyers have, and this is important to note, guys, only prepayment incentives and no prepayment penalties. Additionally, because we're talking about contracts, it's important to mention one aspect of how we'd like to do business here at Hemingway Land, which is that anytime you're going to be asked to sign a contract, whether that's a land contract or a sale purchase agreement, we always provide a sample copy at checkout of what that contract looks like. That way you know exactly what you will be asked to sign before you give us even $1. With all that said, if there's anything I did not cover in today's video, guys, anything that was unclear, feel free to contact us at the numbers you see here on the screen. Thanks as always for watching, everyone, and we will see you in our next video.